o'clock. And Graham Coffey, Dawgs Central, joins us on 365 Sports. Graham, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. We'll check in about Georgia. We just saw the note last night about Rashada. And then I noticed it could be Georgia. Can you kind of give us an idea of what you've heard?
Yeah. I mean, I think you said it well. He hits the portal, and actually when he hit the portal, I sent out a tweet saying Kirby Smart has an opportunity to do something hilarious here because obviously, Rashada was once tied to Florida and the $13 million NIL deal, and that whole situation kind of blew up. But he is still a talented player. And then within a couple of minutes of sending that tweet, my phone started blowing up from sources being like, hey, this Rashada thing might actually happen. There's a lot of mutual interest there, it appears. And it looks like he's going to come to Athens for an official visit on Monday, which to my knowledge will be his first official visit. So it kind of feels like Georgia's in the pole position, so to speak, right now to land his services for 2024.
Graham, for those that don't follow Georgia on the daily like you do, why does this move make so much sense for Kirby Smart? Outside of, you've got the opportunity to go grab a guy who's obviously incredibly talented and perhaps at some point squeeze that out of him, but for the room itself, what would that mean for the numbers and just kind of how it all fits together?
Yes, Georgia has wanted 4 scholarship quarterbacks for forever. That's always been what Kirby wants for his quarterback room. They brought in, Ryan Puglisi this offseason as an early enrollee, true freshman. But they had Dylan Raiola also committed alongside Puglisi in that 2024 class. Obviously, Raiola, big blue chip quarterback, flipped to Nebraska shortly before signing day. And so that kind of messed up their numbers for the quarterback room. And you have Gunnar Stockton in there behind Carson Beck. He was, a high 4-star type kid. But still, I think there's still some questions about kind of where he is in his development. He looked okay at times in their spring game. But, I'm not sure he's all the way kind of getting through reads and maybe fully operating the offense from the pocket the way that they want yet. Puglisi, unfortunately, had this kind of stress fracture in his knee that ended his spring practice after about 10 days. So they don't have a ton of experience in that room in terms of backing up Carson Beck. And they also just don't – I think there's a lot of unknowns in terms of, Carson Beck is going to be gone after this year. And if you look towards 2025, you're not 100% sure if Stockton is going to get to the spot that they want him to get. And then you don't know much about Puglisi yet because, you've only seen him practice a few times. So it makes sense to bring in some more talent. They did just pick up a commitment from Ryan Montgomery for the 2025 class, who's a really good quarterback. He's got a lot of tools, but I think is not really necessarily a guy who's going to come in and maybe compete for the starting job day one. So I think the interest is, they always want to have competition at every position. And Kirby Smart, his approach to the quarterback room is kind of the same to his approach for every other position room, where it's we want to stack a bunch of talented guys and create competition because we think that's going to make players better. And when there's been years in the past where there has been kind of that incumbent starter, I think that's something where they felt like, we need somebody to kind of push as a backup to make our starter better. We don't really want anybody getting too comfortable, so to speak.
Man, it's amazing some of the guys that were at Georgia, now they have spread their wings elsewhere around college football or also now in the NFL. So with Rashada, to me, was it you or did I see somebody else joke about the fact that Georgia's biggest rival, no matter Alabama, Georgia Tech, is Florida, who once appeared to have him? Would that be the ultimate jab or punch in the gut if they ended up with Rashada?
It would definitely – I did make that joke. I'm sure a lot of other people made that joke as well. It would definitely be another kind of instance of Kirby Smart twisting the knife on Florida, right? Like when Dan Mullen was kind of in the middle of his demise during 2021, like Georgia went and raided the recruiting class that they had set up. Julian Humphrey is a 5-star cornerback. Like, he was a Florida committed once. He's probably going to start for Georgia this year. There's a few other names of guys that they went and kind of picked off Florida. He likes to make a habit of taking from Florida whenever he can, and it's kind of interesting because, like, Steve Spurrier sort of had that energy towards Georgia when Florida was on the top side of that rival, and Kirby Smart is kind of Florida's, answer to what Steve Spurrier was for Georgia fans, I think, in many ways. And yes, Rashada was committed to Florida, and there was this $13 million NIL deal that we all found out about, which is ridiculous really for any prospect. But the issue was that Florida kind of reneged on that deal and obviously came back and said, like, we're not going to be able to pay you this over the course of your career. And so he left. An example of, like, Florida's booster apparatus maybe not being fully aligned behind Billy Napier and behind NIL and sort of giving that program all of the resources they need to try and compete with a Georgia or an Alabama. And so it would be ironic if Kirby Smart goes and kind of, punishes them for that a year down the road.
So they had their big G-Day, big spring event a few days ago. What would you say outside of just the quarterback position? And if the quarterback position was a story, by all means, throw that in there. But what would you say is the story of, I guess, their spring in general and capping it off last weekend?
And the story that we heard throughout spring and, sort of the information we were hearing from practices was that the offense really got the best of the defense in terms of, first team versus first team situations throughout spring. The offensive line for Georgia, I think, is probably the strength of that team right now. That unit is very deep, and very experienced, and I think they have about 8 guys there that they feel like they could put in the starting 5 and go win with. On G-Day, everyone was kind of like, okay, let's see what this looks like. And then the defensive line had a pretty good showing. There was a 20-20 game, which, is not super high scoring. You saw some good play from the quarterbacks, but maybe not 100% consistent. But it was unique for a spring game because, like, Carson Beck's in there with the first team offense, and the first team defense has 6 guys up at the line of scrimmage, and they're running these, like, simulated pressure packages, and they're blitzing 5, and it seemed like there was kind of a chip on the shoulder of the defense of trying to make a statement. I think they're in a spot where they have some good, talented, young edge rushers that are kind of coming into their own, moving into the 2024 season, and they're still looking for that presence on the interior of the defensive line to be like a Jalen Carter was in 2022 or a Jordan Davis was in 2021 and really kind of control the interior of the opposing offense.
So when you are Georgia, just like for a decade plus when Nick Saban in Alabama, you get rated, coaches leave, they get better jobs, players, of course, because of the competition. Are they pretty much just in cruise control? I know they're looking for another quarterback, and I get that because of the Raiola decommitment and when it happened. Are they in cruise control?
I don't know that they're in cruise control. There was definitely a different energy around this spring than there was the last 2 when they were coming off of national titles. It was kind of fun to be around, particularly for the spring game, just because it felt like there was a little bit more of this we have something to prove type attitude. And I think Kirby Smart is really, really good at finding ways to motivate his team. You don't go 36-0 over the 3 regular seasons without being good at that kind of thing. But that loss to Alabama in the SEC championship has kind of given him a lot of fodder to motivate internally. You do have these coaching changes. You brought in Travaris Robinson from Alabama. You have a new cornerbacks coach. You have a new running backs coach with Del McGee leaving to take the head coaching job at Georgia State, and he was on Kirby's first staff. Like, those are big changes, but we didn't really get any idea this spring of, like, any issues or any problems with that transition. Maybe we'll find something out down the road, but right now it does certainly feel like kind of Kirby Smart has his way of doing things, and he coaches his coaches, so to speak. in practices. Like those guys are not immune from getting called out on the megaphone, and it just kind of feels like his energy is so persistent that there is that consistency just because he is such a powerful kind of figure, it feels like.
Yeah, it's very interesting too, Graham. 3 points away from making the playoff a year ago. We know how contentious that all was. They didn't go to demolish Florida State, but now you've got Saban retired, the expanded playoff, so they would have easily been in last year and probably will be for the foreseeable future. And that's scheduled next season. They don't play Oklahoma, but the addition of Texas and just the way it's kind of lined up, man, that's a sexy schedule. I mean, it's a tough schedule, but just seems fun, man, with all of that kind of in play. But then that schedule is just that'd be fun to be a season ticket holder, I guess is what I'll say.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a ton of excitement around it. It's interesting because last year's schedule, truthfully, was kind of boring.
Yeah.
Just covering the team on a week in, week out basis. It never really felt like there was anybody coming down the pipe in the regular season that was really going to challenge them. They found themselves in a couple games early in the year at home against South Carolina, on the road at Auburn. But yeah, you look up this year and it's like, I mean, they go to Kentucky, their third game of the season, which is not necessarily an easy task, especially because they're facing their former five-star quarterback who transferred there. They open with Clemson, and then you've got this run of kind of miss all spread out a few weeks apart. Starting on September 28th, I believe they go to Tuscaloosa. All three of those games are on the road, so like they're kind of gonna go and they're gonna travel a lot, and the home schedule is really not that great. They've got like Tennessee and Mississippi State, and I guess Georgia Tech, but that's Thanksgiving weekend. So those return trips in 2025 will definitely make the season ticket holders happy, but there's not going to be any conversation this year about Georgia, in terms of what are they really, have they been in sleepwalk mode, or are they actually as dominant as they look? We'll find out very quickly exactly what they are.
Because Kirby, even after they won the national title and Smoak TCU, tried to use the nobody believed in us thing, which I thought was hilarious. I mean, but if it works, what the hell, right? I mean, coming off a national title and yet nobody believed in us, and they smoked TCU 65-7. So he'll come up with something. He's good at that, no question. Graham, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Graham, Coffey with us, Dawgs Central on the Jaden Rashada possibility.